Good afternoon. Welcome to another session of My First Job, the podcast. Every week, we talk to different people from different walks of life and we talk to them about their career journeys. You might have found that some of the episodes we seem to have people who have simultaneous starts, or they've started off their career somewhere and then they continue, which is very common for people today. So, Kavitha has an interesting start. She graduated in mathematics, started off as a banker, and then turned entrepreneur. So, this is a career arc which is quite different. And let's see what it is that made someone who first learned maths and then went into banking turn out to be an entrepreneur. My name is Venugopal, and I'm the CEO of Ideascape Communications. Okay, on to let's welcome Kavitha to the show. Hi, Kavitha.
Hello, hi Venu.
Yeah. Uh, Good to have you on the show. And I'd really like to know where this entire journey began. Because was maths something that came to you easily? Because for a lot of people, maths is one of those subjects that you don't want to deal with as you grow through classes.
I think I should take you back one step before maths. So I did my
Okay.
graduation in physics, maths, and electronics. So
Okay.
that is where I actually began with my graduation. And
Huh.
somehow I moved to mathematics for my post graduation. So it was like a triple
Okay.
major where we could choose either of the subjects. And
Okay.
so I chose mathematics to do my post graduation in. And I did my master's here in Chennai. And
Okay.
maths was, I wouldn't say came very easily to me, but it interested me a lot. But it was nice. I was fond of electronics, mathematics, not so much about physics, but I had to take a third subject. But yeah, those two were my good, better subjects. And that's how
Okay.
I started and landed up with a PG in maths.
Okay. I'm not going to go a little deeper into what you did your master's in because I'm sure that'll all be completely above my head. But anyway, but what kind of at that point, what did you think about when you did a master's? Because when you specialize in masters, to an extent, you're committing to a certain subject or a certain path. So, did that ever cross your mind?
See, actually, I don't think so because I mean, I was fond of it. I really did well even in my masters, I must say. But then I wasn't definitely not planning to do become a professor or go into research or something like that. But I was wanting to diversify into with maths a little bit of maybe computer science or something. And I was planning to do a master's abroad. After that, again, I was planning to study further and do that.
Okay.
But it's so, I mean, it's an interesting story that I must tell you there.
Yeah.
That a friend of mine in my MSc class, she was writing the Citibank entrance exam. And
Hmm.
I was preparing for GRE, and so was she. She was also planning to do her master's abroad. So she knew that I
Okay.
was doing my GRE prep, and she said, "Please, let's do this together. You be with me in this." I said, "I have
Okay.
no idea of getting into a bank. I'm never going to be a banker. So please don't involve me in this." And she's like, "No, no, please. For
Okay.
my sake, it's just an exam. It's just a practice paper like you're doing in the thing."
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
went for the entrance paper. And
Okay.
funnily, as circumstances would have, maybe a few months down the road, situations changed in my family, and I couldn't take that trip abroad. And
Okay.
so I decided, and I got the job in Citibank. So I
Oh,
just
okay.
decided that I go with that. Yes, that's how I
Okay.
entered Citibank actually. Yeah. And
So, do you
after that,
recall
I
what
was,
the interview at Citibank? I just want to go through that first job kind of thing because you were going into a bank. What happened at the interview? Because you were still
yes,
not
and
committed to banking, if I remember.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
I mean, I shouldn't be ashamed to tell you that when at the interview in Citibank, they were like, "So why do you want to take up this job?" And I had no answer actually, because I really had no clue that I wanted to do banking, or I didn't want to do banking. But
Okay.
the situation was said it, I'd go with it. And it was such a nice thing. Everyone said, "Oh, you get got a Citibank job, and why do you want to refuse it?" And those kind of things. It wasn't really something that I was passionate about, or I just landed there. In fact, I had two
Okay.
interviews the same day. The day I had the Citibank interview, I had another Citicorp, but technologies related interview. But
Okay.
somehow I chose this and I landed up in Citibank.
I mean, a lot of people aim to get into some of the large banks, and here you are looking at these two options. And then, so from maths to banking was not really the smoothest of moves. What happened to your friend? Did she get into banking?
She got in before me, and she worked for maybe a year or two before she moved to the US. That was her aim. Yeah.
Okay, so that was accomplished. Okay, so what did you start doing in Citibank? What were your early years in Citibank like?
See, we were in there are it's a Citibank is an ocean actually, and I was at the executive level, meaning I wasn't an officer where I was selling anything or anything. So we were doing the operations and the back end work and all that. And there were many people my age, and like it was like a college where we learned a lot of things. It was like a whole lot of people doing the same thing, and we had different units. So when I joined in a unit called collections, which was new, but like that we moved from one unit to the other. And then for the longest of time in my Citibank stint, I was with non-resident Indian, like funds transfer unit. So we were
Okay.
doing remittances from abroad and things like that. So that was my initial stint.
So
So I worked for 14
yeah,
years.
yeah. So just to understand remittances NRI, is this a fairly there's a process which you follow? There are a set of things which you do. You're trained on that.
Yes.
Just give me a little bit background and something that you recall. Is there an incident or two with respect to? I'm sure there are things which happen on the bank on a daily basis.
Yes. So we had very interesting. Once I joined the bank, I had no regrets. No, not that I just didn't think I would land up in a bank, but I really enjoyed those years. We had very good, like the whole setup was so good, and it was one of those times, one of those things where you call your bosses by name. Nobody uses sir or those kind of things. That was the culture which City
Right.
instilled in us. So even the
Right.
top hierarchy, all of them we used to call by name, if at all. And remittances and all, there are some stories like the most wealthy people, they used to fight with us for those $0.01, that gets rounded off by the system. So we had to, book losses for that and send back with interest all that money. We used to send it back to them because it was a system mistake. It wasn't
Yeah.
something that we did,
Yeah.
but it would
Okay.
get automatically truncated. So then we had
Okay.
to they had to work on the system and change it and all that. So these are some of the things. Yeah.
Okay. So what were some of the other departments that you worked in
I did
Citibank?
after the in fund transfer itself, we had many desks. We had remittance desk. Then we had initially I was in collections. Then remittances were there, and then we had to do bookings. We had to. There were different aspects of the job that we had to. Then there was
So
compliance.
can you
I
give
was
a
in
quick
compliance.
this thing of let's say, yeah. Can you give us a quick thing of what did you do in collections and something that you did in that department that you can recall? And let's say some of the other things, because I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah,
when you say cycle through, a lot of people just assume they only know what is the word. Whereas if you can describe what happened, then I think
yeah.
anyone listening in would get a better idea of what you were. Yeah.
Yeah. So collections was my initial first department. So there was a lot of learning and training that I got into. Like we used to collect checks. The different companies used to deposit checks, and we had to collect all that, and we had to process those checks. So we had to hand it over to clearing. So So we had to do
Okay.
some background data work based on that. So those were the things we did initially. Then I moved to fund
Okay.
transfer unit. In fund transfer unit, we were
Right.
mostly doing remittances and all that. Then I was in
Right.
compliance. So in compliance, we do all this KYC and know your customer, and that was, now KYC is there for everything. But KYC was a new term which we had. I think Citi started with most of the practices
Right.
initially in all banking languages. So
Okay.
KYC, and then we had to there are remittances above a certain amount, then they had to report it to the government, and those are the kind of things that we had to deal with in compliance. And then I went
Okay.
to branch banking. So there I was in the teller. I was in the I was handling cash as a teller in a new branch of Citibank that opened in Chennai itself. So I
Okay.
worked there for that was the time they opened the branch. So we were the first few people. So we had to do everything there because we were the very. It was a very short-staffed kind of place. So we had to do all kinds of activities, including operating the lockers and things like that. So it was very
Okay.
interesting, good learning. Yeah.
But managing as a teller these days, I don't think too many people. Okay, there is still a fair amount of work which happens where. But did you find that particularly stressful being
It
a
was
teller?
it was stressful because the huge amount of cash, and that too when I was in Mount Road branch. First, I was in Mount Road branch. There we had about 10 tellers, and in that one particular desk was dealing with the company with the corporate accounts. So there we
Okay.
used to get like bundles of cash and like long hours at the counting machine and things like that. So those were
Okay.
days when we used to dread when it was by rotation. So we would
Yeah.
move one desk each day. So it
Right.
was a little stressful, but very interesting also.
So roughly, how much would be the collection per day? A few crores, a few tens of crores?
Yeah, of course. There were, especially if it's the corporate account, definitely it would be a lot. They used to come with armed guards and with huge trunks
Deposit
and
created.
deposit cash and all that. So it was like quite a bit and very stressful. That particular desk was very stressful. Even
Okay.
otherwise, the whole day was fine. But when you have to tally your cash at the end of the day, that's when the
Right.
stress would come in because if it doesn't tally, then we had to ask the seniors for help or call our officers and help us out, and it would go out of our pockets and all that. So it was
Right.
very stressful
Right.
in that way, but very interesting. We had a good support system. So as such, it wasn't such a problem.
Okay. Okay. So how many years were you in Citibank? How many years did you spend working at
I,
Citibank?
I was with
Pardon
Citibank
me?
for 14 years. 14 years.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's that's almost like a career. That's like a, it's as if you're committed to a lifetime career in banking. So, what is the point at which you began to think that, hey, I need to do something else? Or, was it, what was the impetus?
See, actually, after this cash thing, I had some, repetitive injury strain in my wrist because of this. I mean, we never used to count cash manually, but we did have machines. But for some reason, I had this problem, and I really enjoyed service, the non-resident service better. That is where we used to
Okay.
talk to the customers and handle their issues. It was a non-resident desk where people who come from abroad, they have their accounts, they would come and all that. So I mean, for some reason I enjoyed that better than the cash because it's more, you
Right.
don't handle cash, it's less stressful. Yes. So after all this,
Right.
I was put back at the back office. So after being in the branch, the back end becomes very boring, and I moved to credit cards. And credit
Okay.
cards was very mundane, and I have never been in credit cards before, so it was like a whole new thing. And at that time, it sort of started really boring me, and I was like, I don't know why I'm in this corporate setup. And I always had a passion for handmade, and I used to do a lot of handwork. And I had a lot of colleagues who used to tell me that I'm wasted in a banking setup, and what am I doing here? I should be running a business, doing something else. So
Okay.
I started listening to all those things more. And to be
Okay.
honest, I think to some extent, even our stability with respect to the finances in the family, that also adds to the thing, right? I mean, when you are paying
Right.
a huge loan and for the house or something like that. And two salaries are important. It's not that it wasn't
Yep.
important after that, but at least, we could take a risk.
Yeah.
So that
Right.
was the point at which I think we decided that, yeah, that's I've had enough of the
But
bank.
okay, but tell me this, Kavitha, because for a lot of people, the notion of business as a risk is something that you don't know before you start a business whether you are somebody who takes risks. It's assumed that
Correct.
people who have who are working in on a salary basis are the ones who don't take risks, whereas the entrepreneurs are the ones who take risks. And I don't think it is possible for you to figure out what is your appetite for risk. For example, can I take a big loan for the business and then pay it off? So what were the various things that went through your mind uh, as this thing of credit cards, the function is not very interesting. What should I do next? I know I'm good at this stuff. So, what was the next step?
See, actually, I think that at that point, I didn't think of it as a very big business. I was
Okay.
looking more of it as a home-based business where I would use my time usefully and make some money and spend some time with my children. That was also that was the main motive. Like, children were growing up, and I felt that they needed more of my time. And hours in city are long if you take a promotion. So I was staying at the
The city never
executive level
sleeps.
itself. Yes.
Yeah, that was the
So
line.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I hadn't taken any promotions, and between me and my husband, we used to juggle around manage the time of the kids and things like that. And we
Right.
didn't have a huge support system in terms of the family here, in the sense that we couldn't leave. My in-laws were not with me, so we couldn't leave them fully and things like that. So with all of that,
Okay.
I wanted to focus more on the children. So that was getting into my system, and I didn't think of it as a very big business. I thought, let me do something that I want to earn a little bit of money, and do something useful when the kids are away at school. That's how it started, and that's how
Okay.
I became a homepreneur for about 4 years maybe. I was sitting at
Okay.
home and doing this thing, and I used to work with beads, and jewelry was the first thing I started. So initially, I did debate whether I should get into a boutique like clothes or whether into jewelry, because both were I was equally passionate about. But I decided against the tailoring, because then you're more dependent on others, like tailors. I have to be behind them to deliver, and I can't do everything by myself. So I
Right.
decided to take jewelry as the starting point.
So, jewelry, you could do everything yourself. You were kind of clear about how you would manage it.
So I was, since I was hands-on, and I was very passionate about all this, and I did a lot of small things. I looked up on YouTube and on websites and things like that. I learned everything by myself. I'm completely self-taught that way. I have a
Okay.
friend who's, I mean, equally passionate about this, also a city banker. So both of us learned the elements of jewelry making from another Citibank friend, just in
Okay.
lunchtime. Like, it's such a small story, I should tell you. In the basement of Spencer Plaza,
Yeah.
two of us learned jewelry making from another friend in lunchtime. So in our lunchtime, so that was how crazy we were about learning these things. So I
Okay.
never thought that was maybe a couple of years before I quit. More than a couple of years before I quit. But I never thought that
Okay.
that would become my mainstay, and I would actually get into a business with that.
Okay. But let's say making jewelry is one thing, and then finding customers for them is quite another. So, who are your first customers?
First customers were mostly friends, relatives, and then, by word of mouth, their cousins, friends. So once they started liking, or they gifted to somebody, and then they would come back with, some request. So then that's how it slowly spread. It was just, and I was doing it from home. so I couldn't let strangers in. So I would just it would just be people known to me, and the wider circle. It just kept widening the circle, and this
Okay.
went on for about 4 years almost.
Okay. So, did you ever worry about things like what are you going to call your collection, or how would you describe the jewelry that you were making?
It was mostly beads that I was making, and
Okay.
I had a few things that I would source. I would source raw materials from different places and make it based on that. So I called my brand Chingari from the time it was at home.
Chingari
But
means
I didn't.
spark, right?
Yeah, Chingari means a small spark that can grow into a fire.
Okay. Okay. So you started off with. So what were the jewelry? What are the pieces of jewelry that you were making? What kind of jewelry?
Mostly necklaces, earrings, and bracelets in some cases. And sometimes I would source bangles to match them, to make it a complete set. So I had sources. I traveled a little bit and found different kinds of places where I could source all this, and slowly started doing this. I had a lot of friends who had friends from abroad who used to come every year. When they came on a holiday, they would visit me and get things done, or they would bring beads. I would match it off with pendants and earrings and string it for them. Those were the kind of initial pieces that I worked on.
So how many hours a day would you spend making these jewels?
I think all my waking hours, except when the kids were, I had something to transport them to some class or pick them up or drop them, pick them from school and things like that. Those I had kept as priority, because that was why I quit my job. And
Right.
there was this. I used to also stitch a little bit and make some things. So
Okay.
I had this tailor opposite my house where I used to get the buttons done. He had a machine where I could get the kaja, the buttonholing and the kaja done. So once I went to him and gave it to him to do the work, and he just looked at me and he said, "Madam, இதுக்காக தான் நீங்க இந்த பேங்க் வேலையை விட்டீங்களா? இந்த வேலை பண்ணறதுக்கு நீங்க பேங்க் வேலையை விட்டீங்களா, madam?" He's like, I mean, he was like, he just couldn't fathom how a person can quit a bank job and do something like this. He's like, why,
Just for
why?
people, just for people who don't get Tamil, if you could repeat what he meant, said in English, it would be
Yeah.
great, Kavita.
So, so yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, no,
He
no.
said,
I think the true flavor comes out only in the original language.
correct.
But for
Yeah.
anyone who wants to go back on it and say, what was she talking about? They should
So
get
I
that.
went to
Yeah,
get buttonholing done, and the tailor
right.
asked me, "Ma'am, did you leave your job only for this? For this to do this? Did you quit your job? Why would you quit a bank job and do this?" That was his question, really.
Okay, okay. But see, the thing is that you got validation when people told you that your jewelry was good and they said this is interesting. But how did you overcome that whole thing of pricing? How did you decide how to price?
See, it was all research on the net. It
Okay.
was relatively new. Now it's completely online, and post COVID, everything is online. But at that time, it was relatively new. But most of my research I did, based on that. Plus, I'm sure I underpriced initially a lot, because I was scared that, that confidence you don't have, that whether it's worth that much, whether people will buy. At the end of the day, when you
Yeah.
make something, you want people to buy. So
Yeah.
initially, I'm sure I underpriced it a lot, and but slowly, when friends started appreciating, and there were friends who also told me that this is ridiculous. Just go see what they sell this for there. And in Bangalore, have you seen the pricing? In Chennai, the pricing is like this. In Bangalore, it's like that. So when I had an exhibition, I did a small pop-up kind of thing in Bangalore also once. So at that time, in my sister's apartment complex, this was well before
Ah,
we started the store and all. So I used to take opportunities like these, small opportunities. Then there were small places where they would have Christmas sale, or like a Diwali sale or something like that. So I used to have a small counter with my beads over there, and there were these exhibition halls in Alvarpet. I used to have exhibitions there. Those were small ways of selling it and
Figuring
trying
out,
to
yeah.
get customers beyond a certain circle. Yeah.
But it's
So
fascinating because this is from Deepa, who's bought stuff from you. So she says,
yes.
I remember being awed by your little store and jewelry collection. But now tell me, when it comes to uh, pop ups, the difference between selling at home and selling at a pop up, or taking the risk of going out and then setting up these places, what has your experience been?
It is very challenging to have a stall in a hall. I would say that 100% I have to give it to my husband for the support. Even though he's also from Citibank, so he
Yeah.
even though he was working for even after I quit, he used to come and help me set it up, and the kids, my daughters also used to come and help, or my family or somebody used to come and help me out, and we used to
Okay.
set up the things. We have to put it in a very attractive display, set it up in a very
Right.
attractive way, so people would actually come and ask or buy, based on that. So there were days when we've gone to big exhibitions, like something at Courtyard Marriott. I remember I had a couple of friends who were doing other things, like they were doing paper crafts and things like that. So we used to team up and go together and have an exhibition. We used to have a good time and come back. Sometimes we never sell anything. And many a time we would buy a lot more things in other stalls, more than what we had earned in what we've sold. So those were also
Okay.
things that we did.
Okay. No, but the lovely part about this is that you started this off by saying that you wanted to spend more time with your children because you felt that you had to do it. But at the end of it, you also discovered other aspects of you that you probably would not have uh, explored or found if you had not done it, right?
Absolutely. That's so true. And as time was going, the children were also growing up, and they didn't need us as much as initially when I quit.
Right,
So
right.
they kind of started figuring out things on their own. So at that point, it became like this became. I mean, the balance started tilting a little more to myself than to them. Like they started managing on their own, and I was able to carry this forward in a nice way.
Okay, okay. So then, what were your expansion plans like? Or is it something that happened organically where you said you started looking at something bigger, you moved into clothes? How did that come about?
No, see, initially, I mean, how I moved into the commercial thing, I should probably tell you first. So I did this at home for 4 years, and I was quite happy with that. I wasn't looking at making it into a bigger thing, or there was no such thought in my mind. But suddenly, my husband got a VRS in the bank, and
Okay,
he had been with the bank for about 25 years. So he was not looking
right,
to go into banking anymore. He said, I've had enough. I don't want to start at the scratch and work in some other bank
right,
now. I've had enough of banking. So now
right,
you've grown a small client base in these 4 years. Let's just
right.
move it to a commercial venture, and I'll support you, and let's do this together. So
Wonderful.
that was initially a surprise, but it worked really well for us. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So, where did you take up your first commercial place? Or,
we were looking for things in and around our house where we live in Alvarpet. We were looking because we still had this dropping picking business and all that for the kids. So we didn't want to be too far. We could still step out and manage them in between with the store. That was the idea actually. So we were
hmm,
looking, and we found a place in a store in a complex called Mukambika Complex in Alvarpet.
hmm,
So we found that, and we just set it up over there. And I think 1 year into this thing, 1 year into that store there, and we found that there was another shop in the same complex. So we just decided to take that, and we thought we'll do clothes there, because
hmm,
clothes and Indian textiles is another passion of mine. So I thought, let's do clothes
right,
there. And by then we had those 2015 floods, and we were in the basement. and we had a complete washout in of our store
Oh,
because of the floods.
floods. Yeah.
So we had, yeah. So we moved, closed the basement space and moved up completely. So we shelved the clothing plan because we needed that space to do the jewelry. We had already established a jewelry store. So we moved that up to the first floor and continued the jewelry thing. And simultaneously, we were also doing. I also slowly started doing bags. That is return gifts, and those bags that you make for tambulam and return gifts and things like that. Those kind of things I started designing. I started working with some NGOs and some SHGs, self-help groups of women, and I found some of those people to work with. So I would give designs, and they would create based on their work. I would give them some training or tell them how to do it or all that. And that we started parallelly in the first floor store. And yeah, then when COVID hit, the jewelry sales went down completely because nobody was going
Okay.
out. Nobody, there were no weddings, there were no events,
Right.
and there
Right.
was nowhere to go and show off your jewelry. And everyone was
That
sitting
is,
in front
yeah.
of the computer. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah. That must have
So
been a particularly tough phase, right? Dealing with both the floods and then COVID, because flood, all your stock goes, and then so at a at a time like that, Kavita, how do you? What are the things that go through your mind? One is, of course, that you can bounce back and you will. But do you think that you acquire resilience, or you think that once you start a business, then it becomes very difficult to step off and then say, okay, let me go back to a job or whatever other options are there?
absolutely, it's very, very difficult to do that, because once you've kind of enjoyed, first of all, being on your own and not working for anybody else. I think that
Yeah.
itself is a thing that you don't want to reconsider working for somebody else again, however good the boss may be or whatever the job may be. That being on your own flavor is something that you've tasted, and you don't want to move out of that. Plus, we had
Okay.
this whole setup between me and my husband, so it was very convenient for us to, kind of make things work. We could just shut shop and go off on a holiday if we wanted to, which, that's
Right.
how we made it work. But
What
that,
was
having
the,
said that,
sorry, what is the division of labor between you and your husband? What is it that you would do? What is it that he would do?
he is more into the complete working he does do customer, he does attend customers and all. He's got trained over the years, and he's able to identify and
I'm sorry, I
suggest
missed you for a
jewelry
bit
to a
in
lady if
between,
she comes
Kavita.
in
If
when
you
I'm
could
not
just,
there.
yeah, I'm sorry, I missed a bit of that. The video went off for a bit. Can you just repeat that bit, please?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, so he
husband's
was
role. Yeah,
he's mostly into the business aspects and the accounts and the inventory and all that. But
right.
he has got trained over the years to attend to the customers also. So he's well able to suggest some jewelry for a particular sari or a dress or anything. Even if I'm not there, he'll be able to manage.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he's, yeah.
Now, this is great. What about your
So that's
children?
how,
Are they also part of the this thing? Are they showing interest in being part of
so that's
doing
the
what you do?
that's that's the interesting thing actually. I
Uh,
Both our daughters are into the creative line. So one of them is
okay.
a textile designer from NIFT Chennai, and one of
Okay.
the other daughter is a potter, and she has two brands of her own. So she
Okay.
makes wallets and backpacks and all that, and she's all by herself, handmade. And I would say they are a step above us in the sense of design and all that. The children of today are much more internet savvy and Instagram savvy and things like that. So they know how
Right.
to make things work for them better than we knew.
Okay. What about, are you available on e-commerce? Did you consider that seriously, or did you feel that whatever offline sales you were getting were fine?
See, we did consider, and every now and then, we get one kind of a reminder that we are not so available on e-commerce. But I've tried to make it a via media in some way by putting out my presence on Facebook and Instagram. So since we have a large number of products, I'm not able to fit it into one e-commerce site. So then the expense will be too much, and I need to employ more people to handle the sales and things like that. For that, for just handling the e-commerce site and all that. So we've
Okay.
decided that, we just do promotions on social media, and that brings us a lot of customers. I also ship to all places, whether it's India or abroad. So based on WhatsApp, I just finalize orders on WhatsApp and things like that, and I send it to places abroad or within India,
Okay.
wherever. So it is a big challenge. There are people who keep saying that if you have a better online presence, it's going to be better. But it's a choice, I think, that we are making to stay this way.
Right. Right. How did you decide to, the switch from jewelry to clothes? What did you start with and how did that take off?
Yeah, so the first thing that I decided was I wanted to work with Indian textiles, and I thought that the market was flooded with women's wear and women's boutiques, and there are so many people catering to women. So I thought we should cater to men. So I started doing
Okay.
shirts and kurtas for men. Yeah, so that
Okay.
was
Okay.
my brand. It's called Atulya. So Atulya by Chingari. So we started that.
Okay.
That was the idea actually. That there are so many people
Right.
for women. We do cater to women, but the primary focus initially was men. So right now also we
Okay.
have a full ready-made shirts and kurtas and all that for in different sizes for men. The probably selfish motive behind this would also be that it's easier to take care of sizing for men than it is for women. So
Okay. 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 But colors, I mean, that way, I think a man's palette is a lot less varied than a woman's. There are blues, there are grays and blacks. Whereas, what kind of kurtas did you go for? North Indian kind, or did you experiment? There is the Fab India kind of look, which has a very ethnic kind of look. So, and what I
yes.
want to ask is, how did you manage to acquire the expertise for doing that? Because stitching is something you did, or did you figure out, okay, these are the designs that I'm going to experiment with?
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to not to steer away from something that's already available in the market. So I started
Right.
using ajrak. It's a kind of hand block printed kind of fabric that we get from Gujarat, and there are ikats which we get from Andhra, Pochampalli
Hmm.
weave. So those kind of things I started making shirts and kurtas, and also some plain cottons for the not so experimental men. So but in colors, different colors. So but mostly, I mean, 90% only cottons, unless on special request I do silks and other fabrics, like for a wedding, or if somebody wants like a custom order, I take up silks, but mostly it's only cotton, because that is what we want to promote, and it's the textiles that those kind of textiles that we want to promote. So that's how I started off, and yeah, that's what we've been doing, and it's somewhat probably since you're exposed to Fab India, you're saying Fab India, it's somewhat those kind of things only, and very colorful shirts, and we have very good reviews from men who don't want to stop wearing those shirts, so much so the wives complain saying that he's wearing the same shirt in every photo, please can we get some other shirts, that sort of a thing. The comfort is
That's an amazing testimonial, Kavitha,
yeah.
because yeah, I notice that children have this thing that at least I know my son at a particular age only wanted one T-shirt for everything. So I didn't realize that it
Yeah.
persisted into middle age where men liked wearing the same thing all over again. But how did you go about promoting it early on? What were the things that you did? You took up these pop-up things for jewelry, you said. Clothes, how did it come about? Or did the store did do most of the work for you?
see, the store is what we've been doing promotions on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And yes, by
Yeah.
word of mouth, definitely it helps. That really helped. And clothing took a bigger leap only during COVID time. That is, we began it strongly during the COVID time because jewelry went down, and we had to do something to keep the cash flow rotating. So we decided to
Mm.
focus on the bags and the gifts. People were still doing a little bit of gifting, and then we did some interesting things during the COVID time to keep the sales alive. So I started delivering gifts like for Navratri and all. The first Navratri after COVID, there was no going to anybody's house and seeing the thing, and
Right.
those kind of things. The getting Vetla Park, all that wasn't there. So
Right.
I promoted by saying that we will deliver the gifts on your behalf. You give me a list of the people, the message, and the address. Then they chose the gift from us, including the Vetla Parker and the fruit or
Wow.
whatever it is. We sent out gifts to all the people. So small things like that we did. This was the
Was that
time.
done within the city or outside as well? Anywhere in India?
Anywhere in India we did, but the fruit and all we didn't do, outside. Maybe it was a sweet packet or something like that.
Okay.
So inside within Chennai we did the thing because the perishable items would get spoiled and we couldn't handle that. So we didn't do that for outside, but we still did a token in a different way. We did it for people in other places, but mostly
Okay.
it was within the city.
Now, this is an amazing story, Kavita, for one or two reasons. One is, I mean, several. One is your maths background and everything else, but the fact that your husband has been a huge source of support, and the fact that you both have worked jointly to make this happen, and your children are part of it as well. Do you think that this is rare, or do you think that it requires a fair amount of understanding for people to get to this level? Because it's not very easy if the uh, what do you say, couple have different risk you know attitudes, and how did you overcome that part of it, or you didn't have
See,
to
I
overcome
think
that part of it?
no, no. It is, I mean, there are differences in the risk level, risk appetite, like you're saying, and things like that. But
Right.
somehow, both of us kind of, we agree on a via media. I may come down a little, he may go up a little, something. We try to come to a
Right.
certain level where, there is something. Finally, it's the business that should work. So, some things that I may not want, I'm saying, okay, it's okay, let's try. And then some things that he thinks that I ought not to do, we still give it a shot. So we see which works, and we've kind of arrived at what should work. But I think the fact that both of us came from same professional backgrounds, in the sense that we were both from the same bank, and the system, way you handle a certain process, or the way you think about how to do something, I think those things were already taken care of because we were both from, being both of us being from Citibank. We thought along same ways to execute a certain thing in a certain way. So that was hugely helpful. I think that was a good, that already crossed half the river. So half of it was already there when we, because of
Okay.
that. So that was a big plus, I
Okay.
think.
Okay. And let me go back a couple of generations, because I think from the middle or upper middle class, there are very few people who were in business or looking at being entrepreneurs from an earlier generation. It was get a job, invest in fixed deposits and post office savings. So a job was not something that you decided to do. What was the attitude at home to your elders and a couple of generations older?
Yeah, definitely it was a challenge, because initially it was two salaries, then it became one salary and one person trying to experiment with something, then it became two people experimenting, and we still had the same loans to pay and the same school fees, and as they were growing up, we had more responsibilities, tuition fees, and things like that. So it was a bit of a
Right.
challenge, I would say. It's not easy, and people were, elders were saying like, are you sure you want to do this? Is this something you really are in for? And but I think my husband had a good business acumen from the time he was smaller, so he was also, very interested in this kind of a thing. So his support was very important. I mean, he could put down some things that, which wouldn't go right, so then we would take decisions accordingly. I think all those things worked, and once we established ourselves a little bit, things got better and we felt more confident that we were on the right path. But
Mm.
COVID again shook us up a little bit, and we were wondering whether we shouldn't, what we should do next, whether we should shut shop and just do something small online, or what to do with all the stock that we have. We were considering bizarre moves at that point, because we didn't know where this would go. None of us knew which way
Right.
this is going to end after a long lockdown and things like that, when everything had come to a standstill. So it was a little difficult, but then again, once it opened up after COVID, slowly we started getting back our confidence, and we made some moves with respect to products, such that, things that don't sell we shouldn't keep, and we made some changes like that. And I think we've crossed that bit a little bit now, hopefully.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, in terms of a career, uh, how are you different from the girl who passed out of a master's in maths? Have you ever looked at saying that, yes, it's a long journey, but are you the same person? Are you, I mean, you aren't the same person, of course, but what is it that you think has changed? It's very hard to answer that question. So I'm just asking you to take a look and think of how.
See, I would think that I have become more confident, and in the sense that, I work with my strengths now. That's what I feel. In the sense that I was always a very per people's kind of person. So I and that's the reason why I think I enjoyed my stint with the NRI service better than with the teller. In the
Hmm,
bank, I mean, everyone knew that I could talk well, and I could, talk to people well, convince them, or whatever, those kind of things. So I was a very
right.
people's person from the beginning, and I think that has really helped me, even with respect to my business. And so it's helping me bring out those aspects of me better and help me grow in that way. So I think that confidence and all that has grown, and I've become a much stronger person, more confident, those kind of things.
And from what you told me, it has led to a real difference at home as well, because your daughters are now looking at doing their own, following their own creative path. Because at some point, there is a lesson at home for them to say that, okay, mom's there as an example. But in terms of, let's say, regular careers, uh, have you become more accepting as a parent of allowing children to take risks, or do you think that if you had continued in Citibank, you may not have been as accommodating?
Um, no, that's a little difficult to answer, but I
It
would
is.
think that even otherwise I would have been accommodating of their
Okay.
choices, because I mean, sometimes I think that what we subconsciously wanted to do, our children will do it better, that sort of a thing. So
Yeah.
I feel that at some point, I do think that definitely I would have been accommodating even otherwise. But definitely the fact that we were both like this has helped them to choose careers like this, and to be on their own more, and they have more support, and they I think it's a generation thing also. Now parents are more accommodative. We never had a choice like that. I would have loved to be in a design or some field like that right from the beginning, not even gone to mathematics,
Right.
but there was no
Okay.
option for me like that. I think, for all of us, I think, in our generation. So that way our children are much luckier. They get to choose better, they have more options, they have more exposure. So I think it's a thing of time also. I mean, it's not only about us,
Okay.
it's also about.
Now, Right. Creative is one aspect, but if your skills are more related to the corporate aspect, and this thing, what is your take on children today in terms of, okay, creative, there is one set of streams, but if your skills are more conventional, how would you let children know as to how to discover their skills?
I think we have to expose them to different kinds of things and see where they, for example, my younger daughter was not at all sure of what she wanted to do. She was choosing paths only by elimination, saying, I don't want to do this, so I'm doing this. I don't want to do this, so she took commerce because she didn't want to do science, things like that. So I think we just have to support them and allow them to be exposed to certain things before. It's not always that they'll be lucky enough to land up in the right place, but I guess we all move through life like that. So we have to just give that opportunity to for them to kind of be exposed and learn, based on that, see what interests them, and then go from there, take it forward from there.
But you and your husband, Kavita, are part of a very, very small set of urban, well educated, broad minded parents who come in. Uh, Even in schools, I think it's very hard for children to try and figure out anything that's unconventional today, or even to try out stuff. So, is there a way out, or do you think that it has to naturally evolve?
I think parents have to be more open to letting their children see other things and be open to see what is happening around in other, in other families and in other places, so that they allow their children to do this, because it's so important. It's not about us allowing; it's actually just supporting them and helping them come into this. There is a flip side also to this, that sometimes when your children get into a design kind of a thing, they don't see money as soon as probably a person who's done an MCA or an engineering or something like that. They immediately land up in a good job, and they are earning, and they buy a car and things like that. But when it comes to that, the design children take much longer to bloom and blossom and come out. I'm sure they'll be there, but it's a longer thing. So you have to be more supportive and ensure that that is very important, that there are minutes of doubt, there are moments of doubt when you think, maybe had she gone for a job, she might have done better, or she might have earned money, but they are doing really well, and I think that we just have to give them time and support them. I think that's what it is, end of the day.
Okay, so just to go back to where we began, which is, you know, go to your GRE tests or the tests that you mentioned where you had to go in for a. How much do you think is the role of chance, the role of luck, and the role of skill? Okay, if you had to do a percentage, uh, sort of breakup of these things, where would it be?
I think it was
Chance and
50%
luck are
luck.
the same. So I'm saying skills, family background, and education.
Yeah.
And luck.
So in
Okay.
my case, I think it was completely chance and luck more than anything. Or there was something, like if you say destiny, or there was a sort of something that guides you, the universe that guides you. I think that was always there for me, and I always feel that I'm very open to, and what do you say? I don't oppose that. I just go with the flow and let things happen, take their course. There may be moments of doubt, but I've just taken the chance and luck. I think that would definitely be a thing. I wouldn't say that skill is not important, but that comes in a little later. When once you've actually landed there, then you know that you've landed in the right spot, and then you work harder to make it better there.
Okay. Great. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you. Is there anything that you would like to tell young people who are getting into their careers or choosing careers on how they should go about it?
I think you should trust your gut, and you should always work on your strengths. So you can't try to push yourself into something that you're not capable of. I mean, in the sense, what is not your strong point, you cannot push yourself into that. You just have to see what works, the strengths, and then try to do something along those lines. I think that will work best. Then the universe will guide you, and you will be in the best of places.
Terrific. Thank you, Kavita. It's been wonderful talking to you, and thank you for spending this time. And here's wishing that Chingari becomes a fire that inspires so many people, and people like you who took a chance and found the right motivations and help along the way. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much
much.
for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you, Venu. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That was Kavitha Sridharan, and fascinating journey from mathematics to jewelry design, and finally into clothes and being an entrepreneur. And like we said, each week gives us new impetus and new realizations. Thank you for joining us, and do join us next week. There's one more. Okay. That we'll go on another career journey and then figure out how life pans out. Thank you.